Hey guys, and welcome to another Factorio Friday Facts discussion number 269, Roadmap Update and Transport Belt Perspective. So, two awesome things. First off, I'm joined by Afflixion.
Hello, everyone.
Hello. And second, we got a roadmap. I guess there's three. The transport belt thing is pretty cool too, but the roadmap is good. So, finally, we actually have a general release date for 017. I'm sorry, it's not going to be this year, as I predicted, but it's going to be shortly after. So, basically...
They scheduled it for January just to spite you.
Yeah, just to spite me, yeah. It's scheduled for January. So basically, I'm not really sure I'm going to read all this first part because it pretty much, we just summed it up, but basically, what I find funny is that, they say a lot of people have been asking about the release recently, when they can expect the new release. The original plan was to finish everything and release the final version of Factorio before the end of 2018. Man, rip that dream. Because not only is it 2 more months until 17, it's also going to be like probably another year until 018 is done, which then turns into 1.0. So basically, they worked in the usual way. If it's done when it's done,
it's going to be late 2019 at least before we see 1.0.
My guess would be 2020. And that's like not just a joke, like based on their estimations in the past, like you can see here, and then the actual reality. They say farther down, they estimate like 6 to 9 months for 018. Well, it's definitely going to be on the 9 months end, if not longer, I would imagine. So, yeah, probably if we're very lucky, late 2019, probably 2020 before we get a 1.0.
Yeah, so, I mean, that's typically how software development goes. You set a target and then you miss it.
Which, I mean, I guess, except that like all these other companies set a release date for the game, and it's not like they're always late releasing it, when they're like, okay.
Yeah, but they also, those other companies are being pushed to release by someone other than the developers. As developers, the Factorio devs are erring on the side of fewer bugs. Those other games that come out, they have tons of bugs if they come out on.
That is very true. Very true. Although to be fair, even erring on the side of very few bugs, they still spend, like, I think 016, they spent like 2 or 3 months just fixing bugs after it was released.
Yeah, I actually just checked. I was curious on the release dates of the different sub or minor versions of 16. The 16.51 was released in July.
Yeah,
and that's the latest stable.
Yeah,
and the original version of 16 was December.
Yeah, so they spent 6 months fixing bugs even after taking such a long time to do it. So I'm not like, I mean, I guess, if they were to have released it like within the time window they originally gave themselves, would it just be unplayable because there's so many bugs? I guess is my question.
We can't really say, because when you go through that software development process, there are some things that you expect to encounter, and there are other things that you don't expect to encounter, and we don't know what they came across that they didn't expect.
That's true. So, yeah. Basically, we summarize this first part. After a few rounds of discussion, they decided to split 017 and 018 in the following way. 017 plan. It will contain all the things we've done up to this point, mainly the new render background, which helps performance and solves a lot of issues, graphical updates, walls, gates, turrets, belts, spiders, spawners, and electrical poles, the GUI reskin, new map editor, resource generation overhaul, thank God, robot construction tools, rich text, and more. It will also include some things we know we can finish soon enough, mainly redoing some of the most important GUIs, action bar, character screen, main game GUI, so on and so forth, fluid optimizations, thank God, and several smaller things which depend on how it goes. So basically, I mean, this is really the stuff I'm
Yeah.
excited about. It is the resource generation, the fluid optimizations, and I guess the GUI reskin. I mean,
Yeah, and this is like this is a reasonable amount of development to get done in the next couple months.
well, yeah. I mean, they've already been working on it, but
Yeah, I mean, finishing this up is a reasonable thing to expect them to be able to do in the next 2 months.
yeah, exactly. Robot construction tools is also really cool too. So basically, you can expect all this, hopefully, and a little more by January 2019 for 17. That's when 17 is coming out, supposedly.
Asterisk.
Yeah. Yeah. They will announce it more precisely in advance. I would say, guys, just to be err on the side of caution, I would not have your absolute. I would not set time aside from work or something in January, until they give a date, because I'm telling you, based on past experience, it is entirely possible it may be pushed to February or something until we get an actual date in January.
Yeah, this is a release window. This is not a release date.
Yeah. So there's that. Then the 0.18 plan, which will become the 1.0 version once it's stable, will contain the new tutorial, new campaign, final mini tutorials, revision of the rest of the GUI, all remaining high-res graphics, and final polish. So, unfortunately, if you were looking forward to the new campaign, which I must admit I kind of was, you're not going to get it for probably another, I don't know, close to a year.
Let's say a year.
A year, because they estimate 6 to 9 months. I mean, like I said, they estimated they'd be done with the game by 18, and we're here. So I'd say a year until 18, and then months after that to fix bugs, so on and so forth. So that's kind of what we're looking at for a roadmap and timeline.
And speaking as a software developer myself, I understand why they keep pushing things back. Like, I've come across this situation many times where, as a developer, I want to push the release window back, and usually I'm met with pushback from the project managers and stuff. But in this case, I think the project managers are also the developers.
Yeah. So yeah, there you go. I mean, as developers, as you and other developers, you're probably a lot more understanding and sympathetic with the date pushbacks than us non-developers, because I simply just don't understand what goes into it, and it's just like, how the hell does this take a year to do these 8 things? But
yeah, I mean, you and I were talking earlier today when this came out. The project that I'm currently on is just to create a new page in a web application, and I've been on it for 2 months. I've been the only developer on it, and we're still fixing bugs on it right now.
That's crazy.
It all depends on the complexity of what they're trying to do. And Factorio is way more complex than the single web page.
Yeah, that's a good point. So there's your roadmap, guys. Now we have transport belt stuff. So basically, over time, they've reworked mini graphics. Sometimes it's bringing in the HR high resolution, changing their design, or changing their perspective. Our camera angle is 45 degrees, which in real projection would result in rectangular tiles, but in Factorio, this is contradicted by our tiles being square. It makes for a whole lot of challenges, which we are addressing more and more over time. You might remember the old rails, concrete with grid, or trains which did not stretch. So now they found the solution for the last perspectively incorrect entity, transport belts.
Yeah, and this is just the fact that I think belts are the only thing remaining that are still 2D.
Quote unquote 2D. Yeah, pretty much at this point. So the basic idea is to, do some kind of wall or structure that brings them up off the ground and makes them more 3D looking. But they have this problem seen in this picture where there's very minimal space to work with. within the tile that's not already taken by the belt like graphic itself. And then obviously they can't go past the tile because that screws up everything. So they say it would be a shame to abandon the idea with the conclusion of it's impossible when we do physically impossible things all the time. So we thought of exactly where we can go over the tile edge to get more space. As you can see, they've gone over the edge here, like on the side. And they say because of how our sprite sorting works, going past the bottom edge of the tile should be safe, which gives the desired effect for horizontal belts and curves. Vertical needs to be happy with just a few pixels for the structure, but on the right side we can add a shadow to show their height. And then in this GIF down here, you can see much more clearly kind of what they're going for here. This is a small student you can build in the game and demonstrate the concept. You can see how the belts reverse in the ending, and see the belt reverse, running underneath, kind of.
Yeah, if you've ever wondered about the transport belts, yes, they do reverse, and they you can kind of see it in the current graphics, but it's much more clear in the.
Yeah, definitely way more clear, which is nice. And you can see a little
like
mirror here.
In the current graphic, the only way to see it is to watch the end of a belt in the direction that it's going, and you'll see the arrow kind of disappear.
Yeah, unless you're looking for it specifically, you can't really tell. So they spent many hours with Albert trying to find the final shape. How big should the holes be to show the belt movement underneath versus how massive should the holding structure be to demonstrate the shape? With the limited space and the design you see in the one we arrived at after many iterations and experiments and tests. So you can see here they kind of show the different pieces.
Yeah, and actually I have a question that I just thought of right now. Currently you can run on the belts. Will you still be able to do that with the belts raised off the ground?
That is a good question.
I assume yes, you will be able to, because they're only changing the sprite. But how are they going to explain the fact that you jumped up onto a transport?
Well, exactly. But there's already a lot of stuff in Factorio you can't really explain. But that is a good point. I know there would be.
If it's not already on the forum thread for this Friday Facts, can someone post it?
Yeah. I think there would be a lot of upset people, though, if they took away the ability to run on belts. I would say the majority of the community would be quite upset with that.
Yeah, myself included.
Same here. I'm just trying to read through this and see if I even need to read this out loud, if I can summarize it. So basically, in this part they just discuss the length of it and the sizing. To figure out what they can do. They found that certain ways invite a bunch of glitches and problems, but most of them had easy solutions, or sprite sorting just handled it. It seems to work more or less until you see and realize that belt sprites are being flipped by the engine, which causes the shadows to break entirely, while the horizontal and curve lighting isn't having a great time either. In the following picture, you can see that each sprite has one correct and one wrong use, but it's the same sprite, so you can't fix the issue just by changing the sprite without breaking the other one.
Yeah, and you can see, I think it's easiest to see with the center ones, the two straight belts going left and right.
Mm-hmm.
On the top one, the shadow's on the right, but on the bottom one, the shadow's on.
Oh, yeah, I see. Yep. Okay, yeah. It's not super noticeable, unless you're looking for it, but as I said, you can't really fix it because it's basically still the same sprite. So if you just fix one, it's just going to break the other one.
Right.
So therefore, we are finally getting rid of all flipping logic for belt sprites. Originally, flipping logic was there to save as much VRAM as possible because belts used to be a significant portion of all VRAM. Nowadays, they are not, and it makes little sense to save memory at all costs on one of the most visible entities in the game. I already found flipping super weird when I was working on the high resolution belts. Mainly the fact that 3 of the defined curves would almost make a circle, but the fourth would be mirrored for reasons. Now each rotation has its own unique sprites, which allows us and mods to be a lot more creative with custom belt sprites and is much easier to work with. They encounter more problems from exceeding the bottom right edges of the tile. They were speaking about redesigning the underground belt structures with Albert multiple times already, and this was an ideal opportunity, but redesign alone couldn't fix everything.
Yeah, and actually, it's a good time to point out everything we talked about so far was just with the transport belts, not with the undergrounds, not with the split.
Correct. Yeah. And you can see here as they point this out, underground structure draws over icons in the belts, which I noticed. This is a lot more noticeable. How you see the underground is just like part, like half, like the other edge is basically just sitting on top of the moving belt, like, because it doesn't look right at all.
That's some serious clipping there.
Mm-hmm. The underground belt structures are always drawn above the belts and icons. That means if you go below the tile border, they draw over belts in the front tile, which should not happen. You can see neither of the previous problems are present in the following screenshot. Definitely looks better. Mods can now define back patch and front patch layers to underground belt structures. The front patch prevents the structure from overlapping with the belts in front of it. The back patch prevents the structure from overlapping with the items inside of it, which is pretty cool.
So this is like a rendering layer.
Mm-hmm.
So it knows what order to draw these things.
Right. The underground belt structure now fits better to the rounded shape of the endings and covers everything it needs to cover, but in some cases it also reveals more than before. Which you can see here. It's interesting, you notice it's cool on the side loading they actually added like a little, like, cut out the underground part a bit. So it's not like just randomly like clipping or phasing through the side of an underground belt.
Yeah, I remember I was reading the Reddit thread for the post this morning, and someone was saying that they always considered side loading to an underground to be a bug, but apparently now it's a feature.
I mean, I think it's a reasonable feature. Sure, it better be, man. That'll break so much stuff if it doesn't work anymore.
And actually, it's something I just noticed looking at this on my big screen rather than my phone. The side panels for the undergrounds, where there is no side loading belt, it's a full panel. Where there is a side loading belt, it's a half panel.
Yeah, that's what I was saying.
It's not just they didn't do half panel for the whole thing. They did half panel only when you're side loading.
Well, exactly. Yeah, it's really cool. And they say that right here. It's a bonus. The underground belt structure has a variant which shows a hole when you side load on into the underground belt. And then they have a cool little like time-lapse GIF thing here that goes from what belts are like currently to what the belts are going to be like, and there's a pretty huge difference visually. Especially on the curves and stuff. It
looks good on the curves, and then if you look at where the two belts are side loading onto a belt going straight down, right above the.
Mm-hmm.
I like that you kind of see that the two horizontal belts are above the vertical belt, and so it looks like they're dropping items onto the belt below it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's actually really important.
That's a nice touch.
Yes, they spent a ton of put a ton of time and detail into this, which is really cool for the side loading and such, to make it look different than just normal belt stuff.
Yeah, and now that I get a good look at the splitter here, looks like they just added the structure beneath it. They didn't change anything about the splitter.
Yeah, I don't think.
Which makes sense, because they do a pass on splitters and make them high res.
Yeah, I think they did make them high res. Yeah. So there you go. It's been a lot of work of iterating, fixing glitches, and solving problems, but you can see that the correct perspective makes the whole picture feel much more natural than before. We believe this will have a very positive impact on your experience in 0.17, which is awesome.
Yeah, I agree. This looks a lot better than what it currently looks.
Yeah, way better. My only slight concern is like I wonder how much it's going to impact like game performance or something like for your GPU and such, just because they've added this extra stuff to every single tile sprite like for the belts. But
It shouldn't be that big of an impact, and the only impact it's going to be is on
true.
the sprite's still approximately the same size. They just have more of.
That's true. Um, so yeah, there we go, guys. That's pretty much it. Really cool. So we got our roadmap. We got the new transport belt stuff, which will be in 17, as he says here. Some awesome stuff, and I think we're gonna wrap this up because it's probably really long. But do you have any last thoughts?
I'm excited to see what 17 brings.
Yep, same here. All right, guys. Until next time, we will see you later.